Next up, we'll start building the arm. So for that, we're going to go into the top view. And in this viewport, I'm going to turn on the X-ray mode and the joint X-ray mode as well, just like we did in the side view, so we can see what we're doing in here. I'll select the joint creation tool and place a joint somewhere around where his shoulder might be. So right about there. Next, I'm not going to do the elbow just yet. I'm going to go straight down to the wrist and hit enter. Now we have a bone connecting the shoulder all the way to the wrist. And to get that elbow joint in there, we're going to actually do something a little different. So make sure you're in the rigging tool set and you want to go to skeleton and down to insert joints and click on that. Now we've got our joint tool back again, but instead of placing joints on the grid, we're going to select a pre-existing joint and click and drag down through the middle. And right where that elbow is going to go, I'm going to let go and hit enter. And now we have an elbow joint in there. Not everything is in place quite yet. If we look in the perspective mode, we can see we've just made some bones on the floor, and that's weird. So I'm going to select the parent and drag it up into the shoulder where I think it ought to be. Now before we start rotating these joints around to fit into this arm, we need to be aware of something, and that's the rotational axis of these joints. Because we're going to be using an IK to drive these joints, we need these rotation axes to all line up. So for example, you'll see that when I have this rotational axis selected, it rotates sideways. And then when I go down to the elbow and I rotate that same one, we get a perfect rotation that lines right up with that shoulder joint. And that's the way our arm works. Our elbow only rotates in this one direction here. So if we start rotating and moving these joints around, we might mess up that natural order that we had when we inserted that joint. So instead, we want to just rotate this shoulder joint, and to get the elbow where it belongs, we scale it. So you'll see it travels down the arm into that elbow spot, right where it needs to be. Now to get the wrist where it belongs, again, we only want to rotate on the natural axis, which is this one here. We don't want to use the blue or the red controllers because that's not the way our arm works, and that's going to mess up our IK when we implement that later. So I'm going to rotate the elbow here so it lines up a little bit better. And then do the same thing. I'm going to scale it until the wrist joint reaches the wrist where it belongs. And then it seems a little low, so I'm going to go back to this shoulder joint and rotate it up a little. And I'm also going to rotate it on this x-axis so that it kind of goes up like that. See how it pops up there? Because we have this triangle now. And then I'm going to keep fine-tuning it. It looks like it needs to go back a little bit into the elbow there. And I'm going to grab the elbow again and get that wrist back where it belongs. So it's a bit of a back and forth process where you got to keep working at it until things start to line up. And I think that looks decent, looks pretty good. I guess that elbow could fall down a little bit more. And I'm thinking that looks pretty good there. And now to connect this arm to the skeleton, we actually want another joint that we haven't created yet for the clavicle. If you're not familiar with what a clavicle is, it's what separates humans from beasts who don't have a clavicle. They can't move their shoulders as we can. We can move them up or down or back and forth if we need to reach for something. And you'll see that bone right here on our character model. So I think it's important to include that in the rig so we get that extra movement when we're animating, and it makes things a little more natural and a little easier to work with. So let's go into the side view, and I'm going to create a new joint right about where the clavicle is. If you're not sure where to put that, you can kind of just feel on yourself and assume where that spot might be on our character here. And I'm going to say probably right around here and hit enter. And we'll look, and we've placed it in the center here. So all we need to do is drag it out to where it belongs. And now to connect these two things, we'll select first the child, which is going to be our shoulder, and then we'll select the parent, which will be the clavicle, and we'll press the P button. And what that does is it does a physical parent, and now these two are parented together just like a regular joint would be. So let me do that one more time, but with the outliner open so you can see what happens to our joints when we do that. So we have our clavicle here, joint 4, and it's going to become the parent of our shoulder, joint 1. And I'll just go over here and expand this group out so you can see the relationships now. And there you have it. If we wanted to rotate a little bit extra distance, we can grab that and move the arm and give it that extra little lunge if we ever needed to while animating. And we'll do the exact same thing to connect the clavicle with the spine. I'll select the clavicle first, and I'll select the spine, and press P. And now it's part of our entire skeleton, and it's all connected. Now, if you've done that and you feel like you still want to move the shoulder, feel free to. Just remember, you don't ever want to rotate anything out of line with this axis here. So let's say I wanted to bring this back a little bit. I'm going to just go ahead, scooch it back. And now I've displaced some of these joints. So I can fix that. I can correct it by rotating things back. And really, I didn't mess it up that much. Not a big deal. I think that's fine. Maybe it belonged a little forward to begin with. And looking at this now, I think I want to go back into the spine and move some of these around. I think this cluster here is a little too compact. I'm going to give him a little more room where his spine could go and bring these up just a little bit here. And I also might move his clavicle down a little, perhaps, and maybe this chest joint down as well. Just feeling it out, you know? It's an organic process. So I'm going to move on from the arm now and take on the legs. Clearly we still need to do the hand, but I want to save that for later when we start mirroring our skeleton, because I don't want to do the hand twice. I'm just going to do the hand, and then we'll mirror it, and we'll have a hand on the other side as well. Same goes for the feet and the legs. But while we're here, I think it might be a good idea to pay our dues and go down this joint chain, naming all the joints. And when I do this arm, I'm actually going to be naming them with left and right prefixes. And we're going to use left and right relative to our character here. So we're starting with the left arm of his. So this up here, I'm going to go to the channel box and name this guy left clav joint. I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to hit down and name this part left shoulder joint. Enter, down. And now we're on the left elbow joint. Enter, down. And finally we have the left wrist joint. Enter. And now if you were to ever find yourself in the outliner, you can tell what you're looking at. And it's not totally confusing in there.